Corrine Malcom, end of year podcast 2025. So good to keep this tradition going with you. How's it going?
It's going. We're back in the rain in Seattle. It's gray and dreary out, but we get to celebrate a year well run before we reset the clocks for 2026.
Yep. And we might as well dive straight into it. This is, I believe, our fourth or fifth year doing this together. It has become a fun annual tradition, and more or less the docket has remained identical. I know because I re-forwarded you the docket from, I think it was 2022 today, and we'll stick to that rubric as we celebrate 2025. And what an amazing season it was. And we have so much to look forward to in 2026, which of course we'll also talk about here today. We're going to start our year in review, our retrospective, with our Trail Runner of the Year ballots. And we're just going to focus on the top 5 for the men and the women now. And then, of course, after the full results are announced, Corrine and I will regroup and do a bit of a analysis and share sort of the full results and our commentary of how everything unfolded. So you can look out for that in the next couple of weeks. But Corrine, maybe starting with you and starting with the women and go 5 to 1 in descending or ascending order. You know what I mean? 5 to 1 Trail Runner of the Year for the women 2025.
Yeah, the only text I got from you about the official results, and I'll just tease this because I didn't give anything away, that the women's top 10 have 9 different countries represented, which is a big freaking deal. It's so cool to see that come out of the popularity vote, the athlete vote, the media vote, and present what I think is really representative of our current trail running scene and the growth in East Africa, the growth in Asia, the growth from Oceania, kind of coming up with the North American and the European scene. So my 5 through 1 on the women's side has some of that flavor, and it does span in distance a little bit as well. So I was having to take my long distance bias hat off and look at head-to-head competition, look at wins at key competitions this year. Was that Sierzanal or Zagama or Worlds or OCC, etc.? How did they stack up in that? And also, what was their total kind of portfolio when it came together? And so what that boiled down to for me was, in 5th place, I have Sarah Alonso, a star already, a star in the making, definitely no longer a rookie. Came back after an early season injury that we thought might take her out for the entire season. She got attacked by a cow. We were very concerned if we'd see her race at OCC or finals or Worlds, and she did in fact make it back for the end of the season. Just ahead of her, I have a countrywoman of hers that I don't know if she'll have made it in the top 10 overall, but I do think she deserves her flowers, and that is Anna Tarasova. Anna won 10 of the 12 races she ran this year. She's a mom of 2. She was 3rd at CCC in an amazing field, in a field that I don't think anyone expected her to be 3rd in. I think she's been an underdog all season, which is a shame, but she has, put it together. She was 2nd at Transgran Canaria earlier in the year, won the 80K at Lavaredo, won the Mozart 100 by UTMB, won the 70K at Mount Fuji, hit her. And she's been at a lot of the by UTMB races this year, which I think is important, while running for Norda. So kind of, a team that is also underrepresented in that way. No surprise, maybe in 3rd, I've got Ruth Croft. I know that she had some whoopsies early at Transvolcania this year, but you have to remember that amazing performance at Tarawera back in February, turning down that return ticket to Western States, and then a clinical execution in very hard conditions at UTMB in August, I think puts Ruth squarely on the podium. Going back to the short distance, and not in the short distance way that I think a lot of people think of, not of Golden Trail World Series fame, but of the World Championship year being such a big deal. And I think the only person that pulled off the double in that regard this year, that is the German Nina Engelhard, winning both the vertical and the classic up-down. I think if you can show up against the world's best and come up with 2 gold medals, you've had almost a perfect season. So Nina made it 2nd in my book, and then Katie Scheid was the top of my podium because of all the reasons, because of the context between her hard rock to Sierzanal performance, that was stupid. her win earlier in the season at Madeira that most people will forget, but it produced one of the highest, I think, ITRA and UTMB index scores of the entire year. While she didn't necessarily race a super deep women's field there, her finishing in the overall standing was second to none, a course record at Hard Rock and a world-class run at Sierras and all, and then obviously winning Worlds by a large margin. I think kind of cemented Katie, take into account my long-distance bias, and she was my clear, like, cream of the crop.
Yeah, a great ballot. So again, run through 5 through 1 without the context.
5 through 1. I know. I'm like, let me tell you why. Sarah Alonso in 5th, Anna Tarasova in 4th, Ruth Croft in 3rd, Nina Engelhardt in 2nd, and Katie Scheid in 1st.
So good. I love it, Corrine. So I'll dive into mine, and we do have a bit of contrasting ballots here, and oftentimes we have a lot of overlap, so this will be fun. In 5th place for me was Madalena Florea, the great Romanian. I believe the first time a Romanian I've ever voted for a Romanian in our Trail Runner of the Year. She was the overall Golden Trail World Series champion for the season, and by default, I feel like if you win the Golden Trail World Series just because of the level of the competition, you at least have to be in consideration for that top 5 for Trail Runner of the Year, and she did crack my top 5 ballot. An awesome season, super consistent, 11 races, 10 podiums, 5 victories. She won that race at ETC that you and I have been at ETC by UTMB, which you and I have been talking about for a while, but more or less kind of on the podium anywhere that she went, and an overall win in Golden Trail, good enough for top 5 for me. In 4th place, I put Nina Engelhardt. Of what she lacked in volume, she made up for with super high performance. As you mentioned, double gold medal at the World Championships. I don't think that's ever been done before, and we'll come back and talk about some more World Championship stuff later, but that alone and the sort of unprecedented nature of it, I think launches her into a new stratosphere as an athlete, and can't wait to see what she does in the future. Personally, I'm hoping that we see more of Nina Engelhardt in the future, potentially like a full-on assault in Golden Trail 2026. At least that's what I'm hoping for. 3rd place, I put Sarah Alonso here. What's interesting is that Sarah Alonso was 2nd overall in Golden Trail World Series, and I have voted for her over Madalena Florea. 8 races, 4 victories, including both the Kobe Trail to start the Golden Trail season, and then a win at Zagama, which is, of course, just one of those huge moments and huge races that draws the best athletes. And as you and I both construct our ballots, we do, I think, attach more significant weighting to those significant single day performances.
Pinnacle races, world titles, etc. I think do have a lot of weight in general, and a lot of weight this year.
Yeah. And then 4th place at OCC. So had a little bit more, I think, distance variation than Madalena Florea, plus a 2nd place at the short trail World Championships. So, and 3rd place at the Golden Trail World Series final. Sarah Alonso, so fun to follow, so easy to be a fan of hers, and was worthy of a top 3 position on my ballot. 2nd place, I put the great Kiwi, one of the all-time greats, Mount Rushmore, worthy Ruth Croft, UTMB. I mean, that's really all you need to say. Clinical execution, as you mentioned, and we can come back and talk more about that, I think, in Performance of the Year. But I mean, just to put things in context, I mean, of course, this is not a Lifetime Achievement Award, but Ruth, OCC, CCC, UTMB, Western States, she's won on the Golden Trail World Series. There's just nobody who's ever had that type of a resume in the history of the sport. The consummate pros pro, Ruth Croft, number 2 for me. And like you, Katie Scheid tops my ballot. And it's funny, the only thing I want to add, of course, Madeira, Hard Rock, Sierras and all, and world champs. And Travis and I had a fun conversation about, because I was like, Katie's Sierras and all, for me, is almost like a TPOY, a Trail Performance of the Year, just because of the context.
The context is like, it's really hard it's really hard to remove context at times, because you have to look at the individual performances, but oftentimes it is that summation that makes it all the more impressive. But it's like, how do you rank Katie's, podium performance, but not a victory at Sierre-Zinal over the win over, it is a little bit like tenuous, but the turnaround is insane.
Yeah. The context is not appropriate for trail performance of the year. In other words, Caroline Kimutai, who was the winner, deserves to have that as a candidate for trail performance of the year. What makes it so remarkable, obviously, and something that we encourage people to take into account in our voting criteria, is to reward people who show range across distances and terrain variations. Katie Scheid, you can't show more range between winning Hard Rock and 3 weeks later finishing second at Sierre-Zinal, objectively the most competitive race of this entire trail season. Katie Scheid, for me, back-to-back Trail Runner of the Year on my ballot. And looks like at least there we have some good overlap. Incredible, incredible women top to bottom.
Yeah, and I would just say that there are some Chinese athletes in my ranking, some other Asian athletes in my ranking that I think, or who just missed my top 10 because unfortunately they're in a way punished in a world championship year by not being able to attend that race because China does not send organized teams to that, and because it's a World Athletics race, that counts in that bucket. So I do really hope that by the time the next World Mountain and Trail Running World Championships rolls around, that we do get to see athletes from Vietnam, from China, be able to make that trip happen, because I think we are missing some key players. I think actually Yao Miao has been very public about that, has said that it's disappointing to not be able to compete thusly. Like seeing Yao Miao in that 80K or that 42K would have been insane. Same goes for someone like Fu Zhang, who has missed that opportunity. So I will say that this year, Worlds feels more important than it maybe has in years past, and it's building on that. And it now being an every other year thing, I do think we're seeing athletes focus on it in the years that it exists. And because of that, in those years, those results are going to be even more important because it will be the who's who when we are generally so scattered to the wind between X, Y, and Z race series the rest of the year. Like seeing the WMRA, the Golden Trail World Series, the vertical folks all racing against one another, seeing the golden ticket chasers, the UTMB podium chasers also all competing in the same series, I think brings a lot of importance to those events, and our skyrunning athletes coming into that as well. And so I do hope and wish that we will have more and more of that elevation of that event in the coming years. Yeah.
And we're going to come and talk more about the World Championships later. At least I have some stuff that I want to get off my chest there. But before we get to it, 5 through 1 for the men. Corrine, you get us started.
Okay. So I struggled on both my top 10s just because I think that there were incredible performances and it's like comparing apples to oranges. So I always look at a mix, right? I say, okay, you win the overall Sky Running World Championships, you're probably in my top 10, or World Series, you're probably in my top 10. You win the Golden Trail World Series overall, you're in my top 10. You win a major like a Western States or UTMB and you have something else in your season to back it up, you're in my top 10, et cetera, and so on. So it's going to be a mix between those kind of long disciplines and short disciplines. In 5 for me is Caleb Olson. While he had a disappointing DNF at Worlds, I think people forget about his Trans Gran Canaria win earlier in the year, and then his clinical execution of Western States while being a brand new dad was also incredibly impressive. GPT was not the most competitive 100-mile in the world, but he still laid down an incredible performance on really hard terrain there, and I think that helped to round out his season as far as a long year of mountainous racing. And then I moved to my East African athletes in 4th and 3rd with Patrick Kipangeno in 4th position. Eked ahead Philemon. I think Kiriago sitting in 3rd for me. Both those men race prolifically, podium prolifically, and show up to Worlds and, figure out ways to be on the podium there as well. So they ended up in my 3rd and 4th position with Philemon taking that bronze position. I think there's going to be a lot of debate as to who people put in 1st and 2nd.
Yes, I can't
for the men. Thank goodness Uroy and Troy are 2 very different things. I ultimately, because I had to look at some of the head-to-head competition, put Francesco Pupi in 2nd, in part because you decided to double between CCC and Worlds. You got to show up to Worlds where the other head-to-head battle is really important. So Francesco obviously had one of the most standout seasons of his career, of any career, stepped up to the 100K distance and showed that he was probably the best in the world at it presently. An insane performance at Canyons, turned down that golden ticket, had one of his best ever performances at Sears and All, wins CCC, comes back and has a very, very solid day at Worlds, but not podium at Worlds, not the win at Worlds in a world-class field, which means the top of my men's top 10 is once again, actually not once again, he's taken a little break from my top 10 in recent years, but Jim Walmsley. I think when we think about his Chianti performance being world-class, that shines. Obviously, he missed Western States due to injury and getting PRP done for his knee, but for him to bounce back and win OCC and then win Worlds, that to me put together a bit of range on the totality of his season and highlighted that Jim is really good at what he does. So the Chianti win over Vincent and Killian, probably one of his best runs of the entire year and overlooked and forgot about because it happened back in March. And then, yeah, you had the OCC win, the 55K win for Jim, and then backing that up with a stellar win in the 80K at Worlds. He ended up at the top of my ballot.
Yeah, great ballot. All right, some overlap here. Starting in my 5th place position, I put Philemon Kiriago here. Sort of similar, right? Like you win Sears and All, you win a race at the World Championships, you're top 5 worthy. Sort of similar to my rationale around Madalena Floria and her Golden Trail dominance this year. Philemon, I think, took a massive step forward. Still very young and early in his career. Sky's the limit for Philemon, even though he is very, very experienced and already has a ridiculous resume. He raced a total of 19 times in 2025, and it's not all about the volume. Obviously, 6 victories contained in those 19 races, including both Sears and All and the classic distance at the World Championships. Congrats to Philemon on an incredible season. 5th place for me. In 4th place, who you did not include, Corrine, Tom Evans here, a perfect 3 for 3. So again, not the volume that Philemon has, obviously Tom being a long course specialist, Arc Vitrition, Tenerife by UTMB, and then of course UTMB Mont Blanc, 3 for 3 for victories, including, you know, the most prestigious race in the world, that being UTMB, which he won in classic Tom Evans, beautiful fashion, just like Ruth Croft. He won by a comfortable margin. I think it was 35 or 40 minutes over Ben Demon. And I sort of feel like, you know, he could have easily posted one more result at the end of the year and been in the mix, you know, to be in that top 3 position in Trail Runner of the Year, at least on my ballot. But he's in 4th place for me. I put Caleb in 3rd. Not much more to mention here, except for just to put an exclamation point on your note on Transgran Canaria. Like that was one of the performances of the year. And this time of the year, it's hard to really remember some of those early season races, but a massive course record there, beating John Albin head to head. And, you know, great way to start the season and launch towards Western States, where he ran 15 hours and 11 minutes, a stupefying time. So you can't help but wonder, like, what if he wouldn't have had that bad luck at the Long Trail World Championships?
Yeah, just you know, effectively like minutes off the course record. You know, that was so insane performance. And I will say Tom was in my top 10.
Of course,
he's not my top 5. I appreciate the 3 up, 3 down of his season, but wanted one more kind of like standout or one of those races earlier in his year, which I know why he chose those races from like a being close to home standpoint and from like a UTMB focused standpoint, but I wanted it to be that like that head-to-head battle that I didn't get to see.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, he could have easily posted another result and maybe moved up, but I mean, he is the way he is. He focuses on the most important thing and he gets it done. And sometimes that sacrifices volume, which sometimes is rewarded here on the ballots. But I have to say, all of these, you know, it was so close for me on the men's side, and I can't wait to go through the results and how things all shook out behind the scenes, because I think people are going to be really interested to see how the vote went down. But moving into so Caleb was in third place for me. Second place, I put Francesco also. Started 5 for 5, 5 up, 5 down, winning all of those. And then, like you said, feels like he's sort of becoming the best mid-distance athlete in the sport right now between 50 and 100K. The 200Ks I got to witness in person at Canyons and CCC, absolutely remarkable, beautiful races from Francesco Pupi. And of course, we're all going to look forward to seeing him make his 100-mile debut in 2026 at Western States. And then, yeah, similar to you, Jim in first place for me. And really the deciding factor was that head-to-head at the Long Trail World Championships. It is remarkable. Francesco was, I think, 9th or 10th. So still in the top 10 at World Champs. In fact, he was 9th, I remember. And, you know, just a remarkable season. Finishing in that top 10 is itself a career-defining achievement. And for him, it was like kind of the low point of his season. But of course, Jim won that race. So that head-to-head was the separation for me in my vote too, with Pupi in second, Jim Walmsley in first place.
Yeah, great ballots all around. And I'm super curious I've seen the top 10 since I'm working on website stuff, but I'm really excited to hear more about the back end data, just knowing how our vote is weighted a little bit and just curious to see what that actually looks like from a holistic standpoint.
Yeah. And also how close the voting was, because it was pretty amazing. All
People
right.
showed up and showed out this year in trail running. It was amazing.
Yeah. And of course, we're only focusing on the top 5 here, but we will recognize the top 10. If we did the full top 10 in today's show, that would be a podcast in and of itself. So we'll keep things moving and go to Trail Performance of the Year. T-Poi, Corrine, I'll get us started on this one with the women in descending order like we did. In 5th place, I put Excel Malloray. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she set the new VK world record 3 separate times in 2025. So I used the last one, which she did at the vertical kilometer of Fully in Switzerland in October. Don't know much about her, except I believe she's very similar to Remy in that she's also a ski mountaineering athlete from Europe. And, vertical Ks are perhaps require the most physical talent, the most physical, cardiovascular capacity. And to break the world record 3 times, I think is remarkable. So I put the Fully world record at my 5th place. 4th place, I put Katie Scheid at the Long Trail World Championships. A great performance, dominant start to finish, sort of never in jeopardy, never feeling vulnerable, just classic dominant Katie. 3rd place, Ruth Croft at UTMB. What I thought was beautiful about this, which you and I talked about in Chamonix, was how, and actually Rod Farvard and I just talked about this too, the intention with which Ruth confronted the conditions of the day. We'll remember the weather was very mixed at UTMB, and Ruth, put on the jacket and the waterproof pants when Courtney went over the top of the Col de Bonhomme without as much protection, a very calculated risk to make, to lose a lot of time. Ultimately, it paid off.
I listened to that podcast and I was like, I have something to say about this.
Yeah.
Both those women dropped out of races earlier in the year due to hypothermia. Ruth dropped out of Transvolcania due to hypothermia. Courtney dropped out of Cocodona due to hypothermia. Ruth was like, I'm not going to do that ever again. I am going to change my ways. It's not worth it. Courtney did not do that. And that to me is come on, you gotta adjust and recognize that this is a thing that's happening. And so calculated risk, I don't know. I think it's learning from your mistakes and bringing a new skill set to the table. And UTMB historically has always had some sort of wrinkle like that. And you've got to be ready to make those changes on the fly.
Yep. So that was 3rd place for me. And 2nd, Ann Flower, Leadville 100, breaking Ann Trayson's, I think it was 32-year-old course record that nobody had really come close to in the last 3 decades. And all of a sudden, somebody who many of us have never heard of comes out of left field to smash what had been an untouchable record. Shout out to Ann Flower. Of course, she also broke the 50-mile world record, which Of course, we've received a lot of heat for not including in our Trail Performance of the Year or Trail Runner of the Year consideration due to the fact that this is a trail-specific award. We can actually maybe get into that in the next podcast that we do together where we go over a lot of the results. I think that'll be a better conversation in that episode. But Ann Flower, incredible season in context, will definitely be in the mix for Ultra Runner of the Year and Ultra Performance of the Year for both Leadville and Tunnel Hill. For me, second place, Trail Performance of the Year, Ann Flower, Leadville Trail 100. First place, Tove Alexanderson, the highest ever ITRA score in any race in trail running history. Only 45-kilometer race at Short Trail World Championships, and she won by 34 minutes. Absolutely disgusting, amazing performance. So shout out Tove Alexanderson. She got my Trail Performance of the Year.
Yeah, we have some overlap, and then we have some totally different things going on there. The very tops of our podiums are looking pretty good. Yeah. And maybe this is I don't feel like I'm that North American biased, and part of it was like I feel like I watched these races unfold, and so I put in Riley Brady in 5th for their outstanding run at Black Canyon in February. The who's who, globally to an extent, and definitely nationally, have run that race at Black Canyon, and Riley did it better than anyone's ever done it before.
By 30 minutes.
By 30 minutes. So Riley ended up in my 5th position. In a similar vein, Tara Dower showing up at Javelina, kind of having a hot and cold year. The things that Tara did well, she did really, really well. The days that she struck out, I think, pretty big. But to run Javelina in such a way to break a time that we thought might come down a little bit, but not to the extent it did, that to me was incredibly impressive. And so Tara Dower ended up in that 4th position for me. I've then put Katie Scheide's Long Trail 82K in 3rd. I thought that was an incredible run. It's hard to compare those courses to anything else, but I do think when you come in with a target on your back as the preeminent favorite against the best trail runners in the world, you got to be able to stick it, right? And she stuck the landing in a very big way there. And so wanted to give her that nod in 3rd. Akin to you, Ann Flower in 2nd for me, has not been given the flowers she truly deserves, I think, for this record. Did not get the hype that David's record got last year, despite the fact that it was also a very, very long-standing, seemingly untouchable Ann Trayson record. So Ann Flower is a talented magician on the trail and has taken down one of the oldest, longest standing records left in women's athletics on the ultra side. And then Tove Alexanderson, that run. Tove doesn't we can't put her in the normal Troy ballot because that's her only trail race of the year, effectively recognizing that she's a talented Swedish skimo athlete. She's a talented Swedish orienteering athlete, yada, yada, yada. But her run in the 45K, the fact that she is on the first page of results, the fact that she beat all the men on Team USA, basically, the fact that she could have been on any men's team at Worlds and been a contributing scoring member, yes, is pretty silly. And that was a next level performance. And I want to see Tove at a race like OCC or something. I want to see her continue to mix it up. But I know that she's got a lot of other sports on her docket. So we'll give her Trail Performance of the Year.
A world champion in 3 different sports in 2025: skimo, orienteering, and trail running. What an athlete!
So talented.
What an athlete! So cool. The Bo Jackson of our time, the Deion Sanders of our time, Tove Alexanderson. For the men, 5th place for me, Francesco Pupi, Canyons 100K. I was sort of flipping a coin between Canyons and CCC here. To me, the Canyons performance just felt more flawless, it was just easier. It felt to me, watching both of them, it's sort of splitting hairs, but like we said, 200K races in Francesco's career, and both were 2 of the best 100Ks in the sport's history, certainly in recent memory. Shout out Poopy for that Canyons 100K. 4th place for me was David Roche at Leadville. He won Trail Performance of the Year last year for his Leadville course record, and then he bettered it by I think 12 minutes here in 2025. So he made my top 5 again for Leadville. 3rd place, Philemon Kiriago at Sierra Zenal. It is the most competitive race in the world. When you win it, you're deserving to be at least considered for Trail Performance of the Year. So Philemon with his sub 2.5 hour Sears and all was good enough for third for me. Second place, I put Caleb Olson's Western States running 15:11, only 2 minutes off Jim Walmsley's course record time in what was also just fantastically executed performance for Caleb, who's clearly emerged into the highest echelon in terms of long trail athletes in the sport with a lot of years left ahead of him. Second place performance of the year for me. Walmsley, long trail world champ, also the highest ever score in recorded history. So Jim Walmsley's long trail against the best. He was the best. In fact, I actually have the whole top 10 here. So let me just rattle through it real quick before I get yours. So it was Jim Walmsley, and then we'll remember Benjamin Rubio and Luis Sankoife tied second and third. Then Christian Minogio in fourth, Peter Frano in fifth, Petter Engdahl in sixth, Andre Wietek in seventh, Adam Peterman eighth, Francesco Pupi ninth, Vincent Bouillard in 10th, and there's Baptiste Chassain in 11th. And then if you keep going down the list, it's like the who's who of athletes in the sport against the hitters. Best. He was the best, to me, the best performance of 2025.
I dig it. We have actually like a lot of, I would say, differences going on here. So let me dig into mine. Akin to Riley Brady pulling the win in course record in the women's performance of the year, Seth Ruling made my performance of the year in fifth position. Again, when you're taking down times from folks like Hayden Hawks, etc., like that was a pretty standout performance. Like Seth had a good, not great. I don't know. He had a great year. I shouldn't say it was good, not great. Seth, I'm sorry. I don't know that you listen to this, but if you do, I'm sorry, Boulder Boy. I think you had a great season. Fifth for your Black Canyons in my men's top 5. Tom Evans in fourth for his performance at UTMB. And then have Jim Walmsley's Chianti in third position. I just think that run was really, really good. And it's hard to understand how good it was because it's on a course we're unfamiliar with, but you're up against Vincent and Killian and you run away from them.
How good it was.
You run away from them like they're standing
45 minutes into Killian and you know it's a great performance. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was outstanding. Caleb Olson, then Western States in second. Outstanding run. You know, we were bummed that he didn't get the course record. I don't think he cared all that much because he got what he needed to out of himself, but Caleb put on a class act performance there. That was truly, truly special. And then Remy Bonnet's vertical world record at the Fuli VK was my performance of the year. And it's like, why didn't I have XLs then on my women's side? I don't know. Remy's VK just freaked me out. And I thought it was truly, truly special.
It's a good time to flag for the audience. We are actually, because these performance of the years are becoming so insane and hard, we're going to recognize the top 10 this year with the public announcement. We will do that going forward, and we will probably adjust the voting to vote 10 deep rather than 5 deep in the future. But anyway, just wanted to put that in here because it has become so hard to narrow it down. Like the fact that I don't have Tom Evans UTMB in my men's top 5. It's like, it just goes to show like just how many of these performances are worthy of recognition and how hard it is to limit it to just 5. So that's a great ballot, Corrine. I think we had the same in first and second for both men and women, but otherwise a lot of variation in our ballots. So that's what makes this show so fun to do with you every year.
It's not like any of it's wrong. It's just like, what do you value? You and I think, are trying, like, I think we do maybe a better job of like not just voting for our friends and the people that we like, but I think it's really like we each kind of weight those little tiny things differently. Is it head-to-head competition? Is it total spread in, racing style? Is it, volume of podium performances? Is it singular victories at really key events? Like all those things go into the equation there. And we still have our biases in that for sure.
Yeah. Moving on. FKTs of the year. Of course, this is not something that we consider with Trail Runner of the Year or Trail Performance of the Year, but it's fun to at least give some people some flowers here on the podcast. Of course, fastestknowntime.com does do their FKT of the Year awards also. So we'll just spend a minute highlighting one male FKT, one female FKT of the year for us. Corrine, get us started.
I actually had a hard time coming up with male FKTs, so you'll have to remind me that men did things this year, and then I'll be like, oh, right, that did happen. And that's my own personal biases, because there were so many women's FKTs that I was excited about. I was excited about Olivia Amber putting up the first ever, women's time on Norman's in the Sierra. Obviously, I don't know if Killian submitted for his section of Norman's and his, peaks of elevation or whatever, because he destroyed it. So maybe that I'm just pulling his Normans out of his whole peaks of the US, yada, yada.
Peaks of elevation.
Yeah. Because the Norman's time itself was insane.
Yeah.
It felt like days off of the record. But I really appreciated Olivia's wanting to put this thing together. But I also Tara Dower's overall FKT on the Vermont Long Trail. But then the one that I actually want to give the biggest flowers to is Carolyn Himbert, who this might fly under the radar. The JMT got a lot of action this year, and a lot of people failed at the JMT, but Carolyn Himbert didn't. And she actually was able to take a little bit of time, I think 6 or 7 minutes off of Amber Monfort and now Amber Weebles' unsupported time that stood. She actually set it in 2015, then she reset her own time in 2016. It's the time that Abby Hall went after during the pandemic and couldn't get. The supported records are harder on the JMT because to truly support it to the level of Francois Dane's attempt, you need an army to pull it off. And so the unsupported ones get a little bit more action, maybe because of that. And the craziest thing about her FKT is that she should have gotten it by more, but she legitimately hallucinated and then passed out effectively, taking a power nap off course. She got off course and came to and realized, and her people are waiting for her at the finish being she should be here by now. She springs up and realizes that she can still get the FKT if she can cover the final 12 miles in less than 3 hours. And so she probably looks insane because she's been running for 2.5, 3 days and is sprinting in JMT terms, the final 13 miles trying to get to the finish in time. And she does, she gets it 4 days, 4 hours, 58 minutes. It's a 7 or 8 minute, taking it off of Amber's time. And that felt very special.
I got to read more about that one.
Oh, her trip report is
7 minutes over 4 days.
Yeah.
Come on. That's ridiculous.
Should have gotten it by probably 2 hours or so. And legit, in reached her crew being I'm almost there. And then she goes, from there, I don't quite remember what happens over 4 to 5 hours. What I can put together is that I walked off the trail into the woods. I saw people, cars, moving bark, and whatever else. She was hallucinating. I said that I have to get down to the valley, but whoever was, quote, there assured me that they could give me a ride down. I must have wandered around in the woods and eventually fell asleep for a few hours before waking up on the ground. I wasn't sure where I was, but the cars and people were gone. She checked her map, texted her crew, who was about to call SAR on her because they thought she was dead, and then boogied down the trail to get the FKT by 7 minutes.
What a ridiculous sport.
So,
okay,
Carolyn,
so just a couple of things here. You mentioned Tara Dower. She was my FKT of the year on Vermont's Long Trail. It was an overall FKT, as you said. So the fastest human being, just like she was on the Appalachian Trail, Tara Dower, one of the most exciting and interesting athletes in the sport right now. 272-mile route, 68,000 feet of elevation, 3 hours faster than the fastest man on the Long Trail. Amazing for Tara Dower. For the men, for me, it would have been Francois Den on the Nolan's 14 had it not been for David Hedges, who came back and broke Francois's record.
That was pretty special.
A couple months later, sometime in September. But David Hedges used to have the FKT on Nolan's from 2023. Francois came and beat it by 3.5 hours in July. And then when David came back, I believe he only took it by 10 minutes from Francois in a record that is now, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 34, 35 hours for Nolan. So only 10 minutes after, almost a day and a half of running is just crazy.
And that's still in my mind with David Hedges taking less than quote unquote ideal support for it. Because when Francois is one of those people, when the record's supported, you should be as supported as physically possible. And I feel like David Hedges still did like the first 12 hours by himself type of thing. And you're like, okay, I get it. You're finding your flow or something, but man alive, someone could be carrying your stuff during that. That would be kind of nice.
Yeah. Super interesting guy. I want to have him on the show here eventually. So shout out to David Hedges, who's my FKT of the year on Nolan's, an iconic line in the Sawatch Range of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Moving on, the rookies of the year, a little context here. This award is meant to recognize somebody who's not necessarily like a first timer. They didn't necessarily run their first trail race in 2025, but a person who is in the very early stages of their career who has massive future potential. Corrine, I'll get us started on this one. For me, has to be Nina Engelhard, right? Like comes from relative obscurity, basically an unknown in Confranc, to being sort of the definitive story of the World Championships. We mentioned this earlier, but double individual gold medals for Nina Engelhard. Very, very early stages of her trail running journey. And also really interesting person who has a novel and admirable approach to the sport, I feel. And I just hope and wish that Nina sort of recognizes her potential and that we'll see a lot more of her in the future. On the men's side, rookie of the year for me, Taylor Stack is who I put down. Fourth in the Golden Trail World Series. So the three guys who beat him overall in the Golden Trail World Series for the season were El Hussein El Zawi, the champ, Philemon Kiriago, who was second, and Patrick Kipnano, who was third. These guys are freaking Hall of Fame athletes. Taylor Stack was in fourth place behind them in the overall ranking. I think he's about 27 years old. Has a huge, huge future ahead of him. I also wrote down Anna Tarasova's name because, you know, she's relatively early in her career, at least in terms of notoriety.
Internationally acclaimed racing.
Right. So we'll very much look forward to seeing her racing at Western States next year because she earned a golden ticket. And I think that alongside her performance at CCC, that's sort of obviously the stage at which Anna Tarasova could become more of a global household name after a few seasons really crushing it over in Europe. Those were my rookies.
So similar and different. Taylor Stack was one of the names when I was like on my walk today with my dog. I was like, okay, like who are my rookies? Who am I counting as rookies? And Taylor Stack was one of the first people I thought of because I was like, wasn't he like a total unknown last year and now he's a Brooks athlete? Like that's pretty crazy. The other person that came to mind though was Will Murray. Great. Because when he was running Black Canyon with the who's who of the 100K boys going for a golden ticket, they legitimately didn't know who he was. I didn't know who he was. No one knew who he was. He was a math teacher and baseball coach from New Jersey. And obviously he's been an endurance athlete for a long time. But Will Murray went from being someone none of us have ever heard of to like dabbling in Leadville a year ago to winning Javelina in a course record performance this fall. He didn't get to start Western States this past year due to both a little heart whoopsie with some myocarditis or pericarditis, and then a bad ankle roll. But his Black Canyon performance made him a household name in a lot of ways. His Javelina performance reminded us just how talented he is and that he's not a flash in the pan. So Will Murray got my rookie of the year on the men's side, which feels insane to say. Also insane to say on the women's side, Martina Wolnarczyk, the Polish Hoka athlete. I was digging through some results because I know that she's done some trail running before 2024 when she was on the podium at CCC and got a golden ticket into Western States for this year. But you got to remember in 2023, as a 33-year-old, she was 67th at Tarawera in the women's field. She ran CCC in 2022, was 68th. Took her almost 18 hours to run CCC. Martina has done some trail running, but she wasn't a professional trail runner, nor was it the thing that was captivating her and something that she was putting her life's work into. She is now that athlete where she got that golden ticket last year, came to Western States, led through Michigan Bluff, or led almost to Michigan Bluff. The heat got to her. She got carried into Michigan Bluff. Her day was done. She comes back from that devastating DNF to win CCC in what was one of the best women's CCC fields that we've had, you know, incredibly solid CCC field. And so I was like, okay, you went from being like an athlete who's had some hiccups to suddenly an athlete who is running really, really well in her mid 30s. Yeah. So just incredible performances. There might be another Martina that I pulled some of those results from, actually. But basically, she hadn't really raced, in my mind, outside of Poland in 2023 into 2024. She had some results in 2024. And then 2025, it's like, oh, Martina's here. And she's going to run really well.
Star in the making. Both, I think, great ideas for Rookie of the Year. Just to add one little anecdote about Will Murray. At Black Canyon, you know, I was running around with a camera, just doing our thing. And coming into, I think it's Deep Canyon Ranch, the aid station at about 50K. It's Seth Ruling, Eli Hemming, and Will Murray, who I didn't know, couldn't identify.
He had like plastic bottles in his pack?
Yes. I'm like running with the camera. I'm like, hey, what's your name? He's Will Murray. I'm like, where are you from? He's like, New Jersey. I was like, bro.
You're like, excuse me, what?
You're throwing elbows with Seth Ruling and Eli Hemming here halfway into Black Canyon, kid from New Jersey, and totally stuck it too. I mean, I remember Seth saying at the end that if the race had been a little bit longer, he would have been scared of Will Murray charging from behind. Of course, he finished second that day and then followed it up with that huge victory at Javelina. Those are two great ones. Awesome Rookies of the Year. Moving on, the overall story of the year. I have a lot of things written down here.
Oh, you start then. You start, okay, and I'll build off of whatever you got.
Okay. Overall stories of the year. Number one for me, fatigue resistance. Okay. Tom Evans and Ruth Croft at UTMB. I think also relevant to Caleb Olson's performance at Western States, because I think he was working with Jack Kunzel at the time, who was sort of part of this Scott Johnston coaching tree where fatigue resistance is sort of the governing philosophy. We'll come back and talk more about that later. I have some more stuff to say. Another big story from UTMB, which makes it a big story for the year, was the data science, the PhD data scientist who was putting together pacing plans for Tom and Ruth. I think we're getting a glimpse at the future of what the pro athletes are going to be doing to execute at the highest level on the biggest stages. An unfortunate story of the year, of course, Joylene Chepnano testing positive at Sierra Zinal, which vacated her win there and her win at OCC. That would have been a really positive storyline. First East African athlete to win a UTMB final. Of course, that is now, clouded with a lot of skepticism, rightfully, but a big story for the year nonetheless. And then the last thing I had written down was just how awesome the World Championships have become. And it gives us, I think, a lot to look forward to with Cape Town 2027. But as somebody who traveled around the world going to like all the big races this year, World Champs was really one of the, if not the highlight for me. And I just think it's great that our sport now has this as a platform to build on going forward. The combined short distance with long distance really makes it feel like a week-long event experience, as a real World Championship should. So I added that to my overall stories of the year of just like the World Championships have arrived. So that's a smattering of things. Feel free to react to those or contribute more.
No, I think those are great. I mean, I think really like class standout occurrences that happened. Some of my favorite stories of the year included Abby Hall's win at Western States, the recovery from a really traumatic injury to, toughing out a UTMB that was not perfect, to a win that I don't think should have surprised any of us, but it was really cool to see it happen. And I remember talking to her parents before she came in and us joking about how we were like, maybe us all being like, Abby, maybe you should just stick to like the 80K to 100K distances. Like that seems to really be what you're best at. Like, she's golden hour finished Leadville before type of thing. She didn't golden hour UTMB, but she had a long time out there. And so, we were like kind of joking that we're like, man, like Abby's about to win Western States in like one of the best ever times. Like this isn't like, oh, she bested an okay field or was like, there was a battle of attrition and she won the battle of attrition. It was like, no, Abby's been working at this for a very, very, very long time. And reaped the rewards of that all coming together at Western States. And that to me is really exciting. And that builds on our already hyped story of the top 10 women all returning to Western States for next year. And that to me was just like it was feel good in all the right ways, but it was also just a reminder that this is a sport that rewards putting in time over a long time horizon. Yep. And that very few athletes at the top of the sport were good immediately or won the thing immediately or set the course record right away. Many of them have had a lot of misses. Ben Demon DNF'd UTMB twice before finishing second this year. Tom had been on the podium before, but then had 2 really hard DNFs before winning it this year. The list goes on, right? That you can have really bad days, but if you continue to put in the time, you are eventually rewarded with that day. Oh. And so I think that's also nice to keep in your pocket when you're, grinding in the winter weather for spring and summer goals. So
remember our finish line interview on the track when you asked her a closing question of something like, what would you say to somebody who's in that position now, who's dealing with very serious injury? That was a very touching and beautiful moment. One of the highlights of the year for me.
Yeah. So it's just Abby's always been a people's champion in so many ways, but she's also someone who's taken running really seriously. And that maybe is a trend if we're talking about trends in sport too, but I do think we're seeing more and more athletes really go full time. Rod left his job, Jeff McGavra left his job, Abby's left her, design job a number of years ago. Some of them might be taking on projects here or there, but we've got more and more professional athletes truly approaching it with a professional lens, not just from having the coaches and the dietitians and whatnot, but a lot of them are stepping away from full-time jobs to really put their entire energy into it, even beyond, not I'm taking coaches out of that equation even. It's people are really dedicating their time to their craft. And that to me is a really interesting storyline that I've been reluctant or I've had a friction point with over the past years. Finn would always ask oh, if you could go full time, would you? And most athletes are no, I love my job. And it's no, I think a lot of people recognize that they maybe they want to do this thing for a couple of years and put everything into it. And that is okay.
Yeah. Awesome. 2 great ones. Mm-hmm. Moving on to maybe our favorite award that we distribute this time every year, the Bill Dooper Spirit Award. Adding some quick context here. The idea of this award is to recognize somebody who has made significant contributions to the sport of trail running that has nothing to do with athletic performance. Of course, it's named after the great Bill Dooper, the late Bill Dooper, who was known to be not only a great person with great character, but also a great fan of the sport who followed it very closely before it was something that people became fans of. Before it was something that people followed closely, Bill Dooper gave us the rubric for being a true fan of the sport. And so this award is named in his honor. Corrine, do you want to get us started?
I can. I'm fine to do that this time around. My Bill Dooper Spirit Award this year is going to Zach Friedley, the para-athlete. Has worked with On for a long time, but he's also been a voice and a champion for adaptive athletes and for para athletes, and is the first person to remind you that those athletes aren't here to be inspirational, that they are athletes. And that includes championing, getting them to the start line and pushing organizations to create space for those athletes. He runs his own nonprofit called Born to Adapt. He also is a key member of many collectives, like the Para Collective that Danny Arovich is also part of, when it comes to really moving the needle for adaptive athletes. And I think that has been incredibly valuable to see present at Western States, at Broken Arrow, at the Rut, at UTMB. They had a para athlete in OCC who is freaking fast. This guy out of Ecuador that they had to figure out how to get there because his visa was getting denied. And Zach and I and other people were shaking down every tree we could trying to find a way to get this kid's visa signed to say that he was okay to come to France. What country did we have to bring him through to make that happen? And Zach, it is, I'm sure, a thankless job. I'm sure he bangs his head against the wall every single day in frustration. But we need people like Zach making us all better and making the sport better. And so just, biggest salute to Zach Friedley and Born to Adapt and everyone that touches those adjacent organizations, because we need those athletes on the start line.
See, this is why this is my favorite thing. It's a great idea to include Zach for the Bill Dooper Spirit Award this year. He is also a person who just has a beautiful spirit to him also, who has
literally.
He has a gift of just conveying the challenges that he and people like him deal with without diminishing the joy that he gets from the things that he does on the trails. And I think he provides a lot of motivation and inspiration, leading by example for people in his community. So Zach Friedley, shout out, Bill Dooper Spirit Award for Corrine this year. I put Shannon Weil down for me, and I chose her for a specific reason this year. For those who don't know Shannon Weil, she and Mo Livermore, in their mid-20s, were two young women who lived in and around the Auburn area. And really, they became more or less the founders of the Western States 100 that we know today. They were instrumental in creating it as a running event, independent of the horse racing event. And to me, it's a story that deserves longer form telling. And I actually plan to do that with hopefully both Mo and Shannon over time. But the reason I wanted to include this here is because I think it's underappreciated and under acknowledged. The fact that the Western States 100 was really started by two women in their mid-20s. This race that now has a 50-plus year legacy and has become one of the most recognized and admired endurance events or even sporting events in the world, started by these two women, including Shannon Weil. And the reason I chose Shannon is because this year she published a book called Buckle Fever, which tells the story. I think I have it in here in the studio. But
I was going to say it's somewhere in my office, but I'm not sure where.
I'll put a link in the show notes. But I thought it would be good to include Shannon this year because we inducted her into the Trail Running Hall of Fame at TrailCon this year, and she did publish a book. There it is, folks. Buckle Fever. Compliments of Corrine's library on the screen now. But I thought, after 50 years, I think 2025 is a good time to give Shannon a Bill Dooper Spirit Award. So Zach Friedley and Shannon Weil joined the likes of Jamil Curry, Zoe Rome, Brendan Madigan, Gina Lucrezi, Hillary Girardi, Brian Powell, and Stephanie Case, and Jordan Daniels as being historic Bill Dooper Spirit Award recipients. That is an amazing Hall of Fame level collection of people.
Yeah, it's cool to reflect every year on, and there are more. There are so many more people that are doing the work every single year, and people that we hopefully get to continue to facilitate or help their communities do that work. But yeah, giving a little bit of flowers, giving some accolade, giving a little shout out to be like, we see you doing the thing. Like, we got to help you do the thing more. Yeah.
Awesome. Closing in home stretch now with a lot of good vibes in our heart. Predictions for 2026 is the next topic here. This is another one where I have a lot of things written down. Corrine, do you want to get us started or should I?
I've got one to kick things off.
Go for it.
I think the double might be dead.
Good one.
I think and by double, I mean the Western States to UTMB double. And I think that's coming from both the athlete side and the brand side. And I think that what I mean by that is that there are people that can pull it off for sure. But I think the level of competition and the degree of focus needed to be at your best to win the thing, it's almost impossible to do both of them in the same season. And we've heard that from the athletes. We've heard that from Rod. We've heard that from Caleb Olson. We've heard that from people who are choosing to focus on one of them and not try to force it. 3 of the men aren't coming back to Western States this year for that reason. Tyler Green didn't take his ticket back for 2 years, I guess 2 years ago now for that reason. I'm not surprised by that. And I think brands are getting on board with that too, recognizing that like athletes need support to focus on Western States or athletes need support to focus on UTMB finals, and forcing athletes to try to do both is probably not in their best interest. And so in that regard, I think the double's dead.
Yeah.
As a person who tried to double and really would love to double, I think the double's dead.
Yeah. This is another thing that I talked about with Rod on the pod recently, where I was like, do you feel like you and other people in your peer group, that being the top level pro athletes, were influenced by Ruth Croft and Tom Evans in the way they approached UTMB this year? Because they did show what's necessary to win, and that is full focus on UTMB and just UTMB. Of course, we are making these comments only a year removed from Katie Scheid winning both Western States and UTMB one summer. And of course, Courtney Dauwalter did that plus Hard Rock a couple of years ago too. But of course, Katie and Courtney are often the exception to the rule, not the rule itself. And I do think you're right, Corrine, and maybe that's a good prediction for 2026, is we'll see fewer athletes trying to thread that needle, which has become increasingly difficult to do. Few of my predictions for 2026. Number one, the women, this is an ambitious one, okay? The women at Hard Rock go under 24 hours for the first time ever. The reason this is ambitious is because they've never gone under 25 hours at Hard Rock. In fact, they've only narrowly gone under 26 hours at Hard Rock. Katie Scheid, the only person who has on the women's side, running, I think, 25:50 this year. So it'd be a nearly 2-hour improvement on the course record. But as you and I talked about last time you were on the show, Corrine, if ever the ingredients were right for the women to go under 24 hours at Hard Rock, it is going to be in 2026 when Katie Scheid, Courtney Dauwalter, Tara Dower, Kareth Arnold, and others will all be duking it out, pushing each other to what, you know, will hopefully be a transcendent moment for the sport. And I do think that especially Katie and Courtney have that talent. Neither of them, in total 4 victories between the two of them at Hard Rock, has had their best day. And once they do, it will be one of those moments where, you know, the world shakes and we just understand a new paradigm has begun, similar to Courtney's course record at Western States from 2023 when she broke Ann Trayson's previously untouchable mark by 80 minutes. My prediction, something similar happens with the women's Hard Rock course record in 2026, hopefully sub 24 for the first time.
I dig that. That's a prediction that I want to happen. And I think it's possible. And I think if you have the right field assembled, I'm not going to say it becomes easier because they still all have to have good days or reasonably good days. But I think that there are women who can make that happen.
Yep. Sort of similar to yours. I just wrote this down, but we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. I just have a feeling that it's going to be one of those very special years at UTMB. Just anecdotally knowing like who is going to be focusing on that. You just mentioned Caleb Olson, Chris Myers, Drew Holman, Rod Farvard. You know, that's just the men who are avoiding Western States to focus on UTMB. I kind of feel like this might be the trend where just all the circumstances conspire to bring everybody to the same race on the same day. And I kind of feel like that's going to be UTMB 2026. I also wrote down prize money makes big progress in 2026 and becomes more meaningful. Obviously, we made our announcement with Gorge Waterfalls, 75 grand, Broken Arrows got 150 grand. I think that puts a bit of pressure now on UTMB and Golden Trail to start producing more meaningful prize packages for pro athletes. And, you know, I think we're in the very early phases of this becoming more of a phenomenon in the sport. And I think 2026 will be a year where that's more part of the conversation and actually tangential to your point, Corrine, of athletes being able to go full time in the sport. And then the last thing I have written down here is weight vests are the new carbs in 2026. Okay.
Weighted objects are the new, because I will remind people, Ruth Croft and Tom Evans were not running downhill in weight vests. Ruth Croft has the lovely weight vest mule in Martin, her partner. He lovingly carries her weight vest downhill for her. And I'm pretty sure Tom uses water in classic rucking style in the like mountaineering scope of things. I think this is a Steve Johnston like recommendation. And I've seen this from like previous uphill athlete, like adjacent, when that was all one entity, this recommendation. So if you don't want to do it uphill and downhill, you can buy little water jugs and fill your backpack.
think about this. I mean, in 2026, I mean, the athletes notice this stuff, the pro athletes, right? Ruth Croft and Tom Evans won UTMB.
Oh, for sure.
Using weight as a core part of their training.
Rucking was a key part of their training. How they distributed the weight is important, because I don't want to go tell a bunch of athletes that they should be running down 3,000 vertical feet with a weight vest on, because that is not what Ruth and Tom did.
Okay, Corrine's disclaimer aside, we have to be cautious with the weight vest.
We're going to have a bunch of patella injuries otherwise.
Granted, and good point. I'm glad you brought that up. But Ruth Croft, Tom Evans won UTMB using the rucking style. We mentioned Caleb Olson, I think, was doing a bit of that too before Western States. And then on my pod, Nina Engelhardt said that she does it all the time in her training. And she's like as analog as it comes, as like, I guess, unscientific as it comes. If Tom Evans is like the consummate, no stone left unturned type athlete, Nina Engelhardt seems like she's kind of just a soul runner, right? And if the two of them are kind of using a similar training approach that's producing UTMB victories and double gold medals at the World Championships, weight vests are the new carbs.
Totally. And I think this is especially true for athletes who might not do things like ski tour in the winter, like things that would inherently naturally do that for you. Athletes who maybe don't bike as much, who don't ski tour in the winter, who don't have these kind of endurance but clearly strength related outings in their training. I think that those athletes in particular would benefit from like adding a day, adding a session of rucking where you're doing 3,000 or 4,000 vertical feet with additional weight, like 15% of your body weight, and then dumping out that weight and coming back down. It's not a bad philosophy.
Yeah. All right.
Carry some rocks up the hill, Dylan. We got this.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it as soon as we're done recording here, Corrine.
Have a little cairn built up somewhere.
Break the poles out, strap the vest on, go get some vertical. 7 months till hard rock. Can't waste a day.
Training starts today, Dylan.
No, it's already begun. Closing things down. Our final topic here is just a sort of personal highlights of 2025 for Corrine and myself, and things that we are personally excited about, both with our own running, as fans of the sport, as people who work within the sport. So highlights for 2025 and things we're excited about for 2026. Corrine, get us started.
Oh my goodness. It's been a big year of change, I feel like, for me, like slowly stepping out of my own professional athletics. Doesn't mean I don't have goals. Doesn't mean I'm not trying really hard. Doesn't mean that I don't think I can't go win something or be on the podium at very big races. But it's been a big year of adjustment, kind of leaving Adidas last year and stepping into this role at Hoka, working on part of the global sports marketing team has been a true dream. And I feel like I'm excited that that's going to continue, but it's been a big year of change. Like truly, I was like, I can't race because I work every single weekend. So finding balance in that is really personally important for this year. I'm signed up for some spring stuff that doesn't conflict with our media calendar. I'm signed up for Chuckanut. It'll be a 10-year anniversary of my first ever 50K at Chuckanut.
Awesome.
I did my first one in 2016, right before my 26th birthday. Did Gorge for my 26th birthday that year, my first ever 100K. And so I'm going to run that back in a little bit, in a way, where I'm going to be at Chuckanut racing that. And then I think I'm going to come hang out at Gorge and run around with you and yell at people and talk about racing and whatnot, reminiscent of 10 years ago. And then I'm doing Snowdonia 100K, Ultra Snowdonia in May to kind of work on getting back into the UTMB pool for ideally 2027. But yeah, just like excited to like protect my own calendar while adjusting to this very real world of not being a professional athlete, but working in the running industry in a big way. And so I know you feel all the same like trials and tribulations and identity crisis. Like I feel really good about it now, but man alive, did I have an identity crisis where I was like, oh, I am re-signing my consultant contract, but I am not re-signing an athlete contract for 2026. And I have been a high-level athlete / professional athlete my entire adult life, You know, I was on like the national elite group teams as a high schooler for cross country skiing. I went and skied D1. I was recruited. I left school to ski for the U.S. national team and be part of the national biathlon team. I went back to school. I became a professional runner accidentally very quickly. And I've been a professional runner ever since. And so athlete has been my identity since I was like 14 in a big way, like a all consuming part of my identity. And that is I still am figuring out how that works in 2026. But it has been a very interesting process of both releasing part of that identity, but also maybe regaining it in a way in which it's like totally my own. It's my thing. It's not anyone else's. It's my practice. It's my goal. It's my, everything. And so I think it's interesting where it's like, I'm no longer technically a professional athlete as of Jan 1, but I'm also maybe more into my athletics than I have been in years. Maybe I'm broken. I don't know. But that's what I'm excited about, though, too, is getting to take ownership in it.
I just want to say I see you, Corrine, and I feel you. And it is a process to go through. And I have some similar stuff to talk about on this front, too. But it is a time of change in life. And it's interesting. And it's also, a moment to step back, appreciate how far you've come, and to be excited about the change in the future that's ahead of you. So a few things for me, starting with personal highlights. And I have some things that are sort of related to work, related to running, and just related to being a fan of the sport. With work, for me, one of the major highlights was TrailCon this year, sort of seeing that actually manifest in reality after years of it living in my head and then working on it. To have it actually feel real and to feel valuable and to make me feel like the initial inspiration wasn't a crazy instinct, but instead it was something that could be valuable. I really was happy with how that turned out. Our whole team was, and I look forward to continuing to build the momentum there. That was just a big, big highlight of 2025 for me. It was just seeing TrailCon actually happen and exist. On the running front, pacing Germain Granger at Hard Rock was amazing. Sunset at Kroger's Canteen, Virginia's Pass at a critical crux moment in the race for Germain as he made his way around the course. I think he ultimately finished in third place or fourth place. I can't recall, but
it doesn't matter. It was amazing.
Yeah. And just being able to share those miles with him and really just to experience what it's like at the front of one of these important races again, because I haven't been there myself in a long time. It was just fun to be with him and to help him. As a fan, watching Jim Walmsley chase down Christian Minogio in the closing couple of miles at OCC, screaming at the live stream in our apartment in Chamonix, just a moment for me as a fan that stands out. And that was, I'm, I guess, not shy about, my fandom for individual athletes and often rooting for the American men and women. And that was just one of those moments where we got to see a great champion in his element battle all the way to the finish line, winning by 20 seconds in what was one of the most exciting races.
He ate shit like on his way to the finish line too. I think we all gasped collectively when that happened. So it was amazing to watch.
So transitioning to things that I'm excited about for 2026, again, as a fan, my hopes are that we see more Tove Alexanderson and more Nina Engelhard. I would hope that maybe one or both of them has the opportunity to focus more on trail running if their spirit moves them, of course. But things like, I do think the Golden Trail World Series could use some new characters, and adding people like Tove Alexanderson and Nina Engelhard to that global circuit would, as a fan, make things a lot more compelling. Another hope for me in 2026, I want to see Ben Deeman race in the U.S.
Yeah. Come on, American boy.
Incredible year. We barely mentioned his name in this podcast. I think you said something about him earlier, but I want Ben Demon to get a golden ticket to Western States. You know, he's one of those athletes who has the talent to go to Black Canyon and win.
What about Chianti? What are you doing in March?
Any of that.
Chianti 120?
Any of them. You know, he's such a talent. He's great in the mountains, but he also ran a sub 30-minute 10K this year. So he's the type of athlete, an American who lives in France. Make your homecoming, Ben. Race on home soil, for God's sakes. It's been too long. But we should also acknowledge that Ben and his wife just welcomed twins into their family now.
They're a little busy.
3 kids. So that transatlantic travel won't be easy. But Ben, we want to see you race in the U.S. Also very excited about Francesco Pupi making his 100-mile debut at Western States. I think that's going to be something we can all look forward to. And for me as a fan, is like one of those storylines that I look forward to covering for the next 6 months. And
also, like the return of many moms. I feel like we've got Audrey in Europe. You've got MK Sullivan and oh my goodness, my brain. Leah Yingling, Rachel. Like, we got some moms in the pipeline who missed much of 2025 who will be returning to sport in 2026. And that to me is also very exciting.
Yeah. And of course, we've already talked about this in our last rest day, Corrine, but the thing I'm most looking forward to next year is freaking a clockwise lap at Hard Rock for myself. And what a perfect way to finish. Because the way I'm thinking about this is very similar to you, Corrine, is doing it for myself. You know, it's no longer for me about trying to win and get trophies, make sponsors happy, all the trappings of, you know, that high level sport that you talked about. And to me, it feels very freeing and very exciting to be able to, because I am, again, determined to make my comeback. I am going for it. I'm going to try my hardest to get fit again, even if it means sacrificing a lot of the stuff that we have been doing at Freetrail. I'm going for it. I want to make this comeback for myself. And to me, it's the motivation that I need. Like getting the opportunity, getting pulled for a clockwise lap at Hard Rock is the one thing that would get me motivated again. I mean, even a counterclockwise lap, because I've done that twice, I wouldn't feel the same energy. I wouldn't feel it. And so it feels like just a gift to be able to have the opportunity in 2026. And I'm building my entire life towards July 10th, starting right now, or actually starting 2 weeks ago. So those are my highlights and the things I'm looking forward to.
That's perfect. I'm so excited for us.
Yeah. Here we go. Non-pro athletes, right?
Yeah, that's the new craze. I know everyone is like getting more professional with more money, and we are the opposite. We're like, we have zero money, but we are the most pro maybe we've ever been.
Dude, but I have a sick weight vest, which I'm about to go strap on.
Yeah.
Corrine, what a year it was. Great to get back on the horn and just summarize everything. Hope it was enjoyable for the listeners. Do you have any big Christmas plans? What are you up to?
No, Steven's working nights, so it's just me and the dog hanging out here. Gonna go do some running and some hiking, and just getting to hang out at home, which feels really, really good.
Well, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to both you, Steven, and to our global listeners. An amazing season. Hope everybody has a great end of the year.